ahead and get started. This is a work session on the executive appointment for William Falsey, Chief Administrative Officer. Today is December 13th and it's 12:21 p.m. We'll start with introductions.
Mark Littlefield.
Zach Johnson.
Anna Brawley.
And Meg Zalatel, and I will go ahead and just kick this over. We, of course, have Mr. Falsey with us and the mayor. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. And thanks to you all for being here today to consider Bill Falsey as the municipality's Chief Administrative Officer. Mr. Falsey earned a bachelor's degree from Stanford University and his JD from Yale Law School. He has plenty of experience in and outside of Alaska. Early in his career, he clerked for the Chief Justice of the Alaska Supreme Court. He also served as the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Bureau of Land Management for the U.S. Department of the Interior in D.C. While Mr. Falsey has plenty of experience working in private practice, he has long been a dedicated public servant. He served Anchorage as municipal manager from 2017 to 2020, overseeing the police, fire, and health departments, among others. From 2015 to 2017, he served as Anchorage's municipal attorney. Mr. Falsey has helped lead teams to support the city on issues like the sale of MLNP and successful reconstruction of the petroleum cement terminal at the Port of Alaska. Residents may also know him for leadership after the November 2018 earthquake, during the 2019 wildfire season, and for serving as incident commander in 2020, responsible for overseeing Anchorage's on-the-ground response to COVID-19. He is a graduate of Diamond High School and the proud father of two. The work Mr. Falsey has already put in as part of our team ranges from a comprehensive refresh of the financial plan to modernize the Port of Alaska to closing the books on the municipality's overdue financial audit. Initially, that was audit, plural, to a rewrite of purchasing under Title VII. Bringing the Chief Administrative Officer role back to the municipality reflects the amount of work we have to do and the importance of making sure our internal service departments, from HR to finance to IT and purchasing, are all fully supported and operating at a high level as the backbone of our organization. Acting in the role since July 1, Mr. Falsey has been putting in long hours and good work to repair and bolster the municipality's internal operations, which may go unseen by many, but are felt by all. I think he is the perfect fit for the job, and I ask you to confirm him as Chief Administrative Officer.
Thank you. So as is customary, Mr. Falsey, would you like to make any statement?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I won't take up too much time, as I think this really is the Assembly's opportunity to ask questions of me and of the administration. But as a set piece, I will say it is a genuine privilege to be back in public service in City Hall. As someone who had the opportunity to be here for 5.5 years and then left, the return is deeply felt and genuinely appreciated by me. And I think there are at least 3 reasons for that. One is I think all of us who have touched this building, and I suspect you guys included, have been a little bit ruined by it, in that it is so mission-driven and so purpose-driven that everything that is not coming to work with people you like to make your hometown as good as it possibly can be feels like not that. So to have, again, the chance to come to this place and to work with people that I genuinely appreciate on a task which is just to make our small little beloved corner of the world as good as it can be, it can't be beat. And returning second is also about the people. I think you'll find that, hopefully, that my management style is collaborative, team-oriented, tell the truth and boldly. Teamwork makes dream work. Many hands make light work. And so just the occasion to come back and see old faces that were still here when I left the first time and meet the new people has been really wonderful. And last, the opportunity to work on some unfinished problems and emerging opportunities has been really great. And that has been things that the mayor has already mentioned, working on closing our financial audits, working on refreshing our port plan of finance, taking care of some of the things that really grind the gears of the municipality to a bit of a slower halt, knowing from the beginning, for instance, that it takes a long time to change a position, to get it through classification, and to get to work on some of those issues that have always been sort of lower on the priority list, but have had such a huge effect on the institution, I think has been top of mind for me. When I was a municipal manager, I sort of described the job as three parts. So one part telephone switchboard operator, just making sure the hive mind knows what the hive mind is doing. One part cross silo problem solver, and one part helping to drive the enterprise. And I think I bring that same approach to this new chief administrative officer position, with a new invitation to do cross-silo collaborative problem solving with a different set of units. And I think ones that haven't been paired in a while that I think are hopefully going to pay some big dividends. So for instance, we're spending a lot of effort on trying to figure out how to integrate IT and the controller's office greater to unleash some efficiencies in the SAP world and really take advantage of the investment we made in that system. All that is a lot to say. I'm very happy to be here, and I welcome any questions.
I'll kick it off then. Great. Thank you, Mr. Falsey. So you touched on a real key issue for our branch of government, which is the grinding of gears on some of these internal processes. And we're our own separate branch of government. And so we don't always have the visibility, we think, to possibly see where those gears are getting stuck and how best to get them moving again. In particular, HR. We find that our job postings or new job classifications take a very, very long time, like up to half a year at times. And then similarly, purchasing. And would really just like to hear a little bit about your viewpoint on that. As you know, the legislative branch has changed quite a bit since you were in the administration last, and we just want to make sure that we can work collaboratively to keep our business moving as efficiently as possible. And purchasing and HR really seem to have been two of those real sticking points that have gummed up our business.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. The cold comfort response is you are not alone, but that is cold comfort because it is not uncommon for a new position or a position reclassification, when you include hiring, to take many months. And that is a thing that affects our ability to deliver frontline services. I mean, it's not just an irritation. And so it is on the list of things that we would like to pick up and interrogate. Some of those timelines are inevitable because that we really have wedded ourselves to a classification program, so we really must go through those steps. Some of them are hard to compress because they're outside of our control. So for instance, when you are hiring bus drivers, part of our long timeline is driven by the fact that our drug testing contractor is taking a very long time to give us appointments and then to return results to us. But all of those things are things that we are definitely paying attention to and trying to manage, and we hope to have better results and better data about all of that. So for those who have not yet had a chance to meet Ron Kamahele, when we had some of our earlier work sessions and we put turnover data on the board, he also has sort of time of delivery data that we're working on bringing into a more shareable format. So all that is to say, not alone, get that we see the problem, we recognize it as a problem, and we're definitely committed to fixing it for everybody, the Assembly included.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Falsey. Yeah, if we just always like to be included, even if it's just in some way to make sure the branch perspective, particularly for the clerk's office, which is where we still run through most of that in legislative services. Any other questions, Mr. Falsey? Anna.
Yeah, I have a few questions just to put on the table, and then I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you. And thanks for stepping back in this role, or in this new role, but back into the Muni. One is, well, really just I guess underscoring the purchasing process. I'm curious what your thoughts are there, because I think, so your role is mainly with these internal departments, but I think there are ways that they have it external facing. So obviously HR is with hiring, procurement. You probably are aware of a lot of the issues with the alcohol tax grant administration, but I think really highlights just a lot of the barriers, especially for small businesses to have that opportunity, or I should say there's small businesses and then there's also grant organizations. Anyway, so I'm curious your thoughts on that, and then maybe I'll hold my other questions if you want to speak to that one. And just to boil it down, I think ways to be more efficient, be more intentionally inclusive and focused on equity as far as access to those. And then again, in the spirit of broadening the variety of folks who we work with and can provide Muni money to for those services. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Brawley. Through the chair, I'm excited to receive those questions because they feel like they have been set up in as much as I have just come from 2 meetings which are related to both of those things. I'll take them in reverse order. The mayor's office, in the form of Thea, had surfaced that the request for grant proposal process was locking some potential responders into, for instance, insurance requirements, which are occasionally onerous and probably sometimes not even necessary or appropriate. So we've started that conversation in earnest, and we recognize a few things. First, the request for grant proposal process is itself an optional process. So we are using it in a particular way now, but we don't really need to be using it in a way to paint ourselves into a corner. Second, it is a process that we created and the assembly controls, in the sense that it is partly in, actually it's in the Anchorage regulations, which are a dark corner of the municipality. We'd like to put it in ordinance, but to make it work for us. And third, that the insurance requirements themselves are more art than science. And so we just landed on at least an interim solution of saying, before the health department, which is the real main user of the request for grant proposal process, puts one into the queue for purchasing with an insurance requirement in it, that will loop it through risk and have a first sort of scrub on whether we really need $1 million of cyber insurance in order to do a camp cleanup or whatever we're asking for grant proposals for. So I will say that concern has already surfaced in the administration, and we're already working it. Hopefully we'll start to see some new changes. The second issue you mentioned was related to HR, and I was happy to invite the mayor to our latest version of the Employee Lifecycle Solutions team, which I think is something that surfaced a bit. I'll tell you what it is. It's not anything secret. We've decided that it's worth picking up some of our old institutions. A lot of the institutions in the municipality, I think, have evolved rather than been designed. And so we're going to pick up the whole HR kit and caboodle and give it a fresh design, meaning that we said, what is the whole employee experience from you don't work here to your last day, and break that into chunks, pick it all up and look at it and say, is this the way we really want this to go? I think next week we're going to kick off with a new look at orientation, for instance. And we recognize that that for sure has external impacts. And just on that front, we invited Kim Waller to be part of that team too, because we're very interested in making sure that the community reflects the community we serve, and that the message that you can come work here, that you are welcome, is communicated out to everyone and heard by everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. And you're bringing up insurance and other pieces is, I guess, a further setup, because my other kind of
It's good. We
and
should
I'm-
just keep doing this all day.
Yeah. So I guess I'm going to ask two questions, but I think they're related. You mentioned emerging opportunities for change. And so I'm curious kind of what you think about that. And I'm also curious your thoughts on how we accelerate the speed of that change, because it's been on my mind for so many things that we get stuck in these processes, or we just kind of default to a certain tempo, right? Because that's how things are. And that is not meeting the moment of basically human existence right now. We have a lot of, right. And so I go big, but, but kind of thinking about, because I think what what I found in the assembly is there are certainly limits, but pushing the envelope on that speed can pay off, right? I mean, it does have costs, certainly. And then related to that, again, these are all kind of big picture, I think. I'm curious your thoughts on, not just your own personal view of this, but risk tolerance. I want to bring that up because I think, things like insurance requirements, I see where they're coming from, but I think it seems like the default of a large institution, especially government, is extreme risk intolerance, right? Or risk
Aversion.
aversion. Yes. Thank you. And I think, again, it's finding that balance, right? It's making sure we don't have buildings that fall down, but not making people take 5 years to build everything, right? So I'm interested in kind of exploring that question in a lot of areas, but I think because your role specifically sits with a lot of not just the departments, but really that dealing with that question, I'm curious your thoughts on that. And also, again, because it is related to the speed of change, I think.
Yeah, I'll take them in reverse order. I think the risk aversion, as I've lived in these institutions, I think this is endemic to a lot of bureaucracies. And I don't think it's anyone doing anything wrong necessarily, or even purposefully slow walking things or dragging their feet. But I think a lot of times people optimize for their own role. So it is always in risk's best interest to say, you must have all of this insurance, because then risk doesn't lose. Or it is always in HR's best interest to say we should settle this grievance short of termination because that is the maximum defensible position. But there are times when those individual optimizations are not optimizing for the enterprise. And I think that's part of the role that the executive management has to play, where you sort of convene the court and you say, I'd like to hear from risks. I'm fully informed by the risks here, or I'd like to hear from IT on whether this software system may or may not actually be best in their world. It doesn't comply with all the standards. But I also want to hear from the movement who says, notwithstanding that risk, I'm interested in taking this course, and then make some kind of judgment. We've actually, Susie Marshall in the IT world has actually proactively convened that forum to help break ties when IT says the software that the police department wants to use actually is not certified in the way we'd like. What do you think? And I think that model has been working pretty well internally. Again, one of those invisible things that you don't really see. But it for sure is a mindset that I think we bring to this, where the reflexive no, or at least the reflexive risk minimizing no from a corner of the enterprise is not always the end of the story. And then second, you mentioned speed. I think I'm sort of dispositionally wired in the same way. I come into this building again with a giant countdown clock over my head. And probably I'm irritating people because I'm like, we have 3 years for sure. And that means we have already gotten through 1/6 of our time here, right? And the time is gonna go quick because at least it went quick before and it's gonna go quick again. And you think you're gonna work on X, Y, and Z, and then there's an earthquake or a pandemic and you get distracted. So at least my disposition is always to sort of do two things. One is to start with the end goal in mind and work backwards from the end goal. So, and then second, to try to bring in all of the interested players early. And hopefully the first incarnation of that is the Title VII rewrite. So rather than creating a lot of intermediate products or sort of policy memos, we drafted an ordinance. And then no one has seen that out in the public yet, because our first step was to say, we'd like some subset of the assembly who really cares about this to come work on it with us. And there's still things we got to work out, but I think that's wired for sometime this spring. We probably are going to rewrite Title VII in a way that's going to really help the enterprise and actually solve some problems that we didn't even see. So the first version from one assembly member was like, I don't even think that's a problem. But I'm like, oh, actually, there is a loophole there that we should probably close. So hopefully that means that we're getting to goals quicker, but also better, that we're getting to landing on more substantive, better substance in the end too.
So I put myself back in the queue. Tell me a little bit more about this Envision Grants Office. And what's been on my mind is we had the Energy Summit. We now have the strategic plan on 10,000 homes in 10 years. And really, we also have some interesting challenges as a municipality, whether it's fleet or all the various charts you've shown us since you've been here since July. What's the vision there? And what do you think that looks like as we may see some changes at the federal level?
I think this is one where we could certainly benefit from a group visioning session. So I think where it starts now is there's a recognized emerging consensus that the municipality should have greater grant seeking and grant complying application and grant compliance abilities. There are already components of grants that exist everywhere in the muni. So the health department forever gets HUD grants. The FTA grants always go to the transit department. The FAA grants always go to Merrill Field. But I think that there is a belief, and hopefully this is true, that was occasioned by the extraordinary federal opportunities that showed up in the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, but that are always kind of out there, that there isn't one person who is tasked with sort of always going on an e-civis kind of platform and saying, here are all of the requests for notice of funding availabilities. This might solve a problem that we have, or vice versa, that it's roving across the municipality and knows here's some emerging issues. Certainly, surely there is some grant funding there, or at least we should look. And then who can quarterback that effort, meaning that they would then sort of bring all the people together, all the players together to actually, after identifying the opportunity, to apply for the opportunity, and then ultimately, hopefully, help with some of the grant compliance. Although once the controller's office is back up in shape, maybe a lot of that lives there. But I'll also say it is early days. So before the budget and the reorganization was passed, it was a little bit on a shelf until we waited to see how that dust settled. Now that dust has settled, I now am going through the classification process. So I have to figure out how to create a position for an office that hasn't existed, meaning I'm doing a classification thing and we're making position descriptions. And hopefully that results in some kind of hiring opportunity early in 2025. But I also definitely welcome thoughts on how that office should operate.
Great, thank you. If you would like a little bit of a case study, we recently applied for the HUD Pro 2 opportunity, and it was really a cross-branch, cross-sector collaboration. We had the university in it, ACDA, as well as planning and the mayor's office. And I think they're probably, if we were to and the health department, if we were to and AWU, yeah.
Mhm.
So if we were to unfurl that a little bit, I think it might be really instructive about how what seems like might be a singular targeted opportunity actually can involve a number of departments and both branches. So any other questions for Mr. Falsey? Yeah, Mark.
I don't have a question. I just have a statement. I really want to thank you for coming back and commend anybody with your past experience, knowing what you're coming into, the dark times that come with a job, the pressures and everything else, and you're attacking it with, with your feet running. And I really commend you for it. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, anything? All right, Mr. Falsey's confirmation vote will be before us on Tuesday night. And the item is in the consent agenda. Thank you, Mr. Falsey. Thank you, Mayor. We will start again at 1 o'clock.